do what you have to do to be a father to your son. If you have to sell everything, then do that. Be a father to him.
This video is kindly sponsored by Reed Mentor School, which are an online independent Muslim school for children aged 6 to 16, where you can get the British National Curriculum full-time education alongside your Islamic values and Islamic studies. Do check them out on reedmentorschool.com. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the Dadhood podcast. We're here with another one, and this time on a topic that isn't very frequently spoken about within the sort of parenting space or the men's space online, whatever you want to call it, which is when it comes to mediation between couples that are going through difficulties in their marriage, and how to maybe resolve that through different solutions and different scenarios. And maybe when you do end up taking the road towards divorce, what is maybe the best way towards doing some of those things? And that's why I have our guest here today, which is Tawhid from Salam Mediation. And he's going to be talking about how he started Salam Mediation, what mediation is all about, and inshallah I'm going to learn a lot because I don't know too much, and I'm going to learn with you guys as well, inshallah. So hopefully we get all the right questions asked. But to start off, we'll welcome Tawhid. Assalamu alaikum, Tawhid. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam, brother. I'm well, thank you, and thank you for having me on your wonderful podcast.
Jazakallah khair for coming on. Now, Tawhid, our famous question that we always ask our guests is, how old were you when you first became a father, and how many children do you have?
Alhamdulillah, I think I was around, I have to work out now, about 29, I would have thought, yes. Okay. And my son, now 15 years old, so he was born in 2008. And what was the other question?
That was how many?
I have one amazing son.
Amazing, alhamdulillah. And so, I know last time we spoke and you were kind of, in fact, just now as well as the last time that we were just speaking in person, you were telling me about kind of the adventures you've taken your son on over the past few years. I thought it'd be a nice way to open up to get to understand you a bit more,
sure.
Which is, what was this decision that you made to kind of expose your son to various landscapes and societies and cultures across the world?
Well, a little bit of background myself. I'm a documentary photographer as well, and a designer. I know jack of all trades it may come across, but that is my initial profession, has been many years. I traveled almost 42 countries. So my son heard many of my stories that remote people, remote places, and the things I got up to as a young man at that time. And he always wanted to travel with me. I said, absolutely, when you're ready, we will travel. So our journey of travel started about when he was 10. So it took him to lots of different places that many parents wouldn't take because they're not the most, I suppose, comfortable or safe or maybe fearful. But yeah, remote places, jungles, down to deserts. We love the deserts a lot. We've been several times. The last trip was to Mauritania. This is about 4 months ago. I found this journey for 22 hours on an iron ore mine. So my deep reason was to show him the world, that the world is truly beautiful, and meet different kind of cultures and communities, and the way there's a lot to learn by simply spending time with the right kind of people. Sometime sitting in a remote mosque. Some of the mosques that we set in Mauritania didn't even have floor, so you prayed directly on the sand. And meeting and eating different kind of food, talking to different. And my son, at the age of 11, 12, played with the desert people, lived in the desert. And so it's for myself, it's kind of like teaching in a different way, and showing the world. And so that to be more inclusive and not to see the world in a narrow-minded way. But also, I was hoping, instead of telling him, inclining towards learning Islam with those desert people. So deep down, taking him to the desert libraries and some of the sheikhs and things. And so we found a sheikha who was middle of nowhere, living literally in a tin shed. And we ate and sat down and we recited with her. So hopefully he will incline towards like Hamza Yusuf, but Allah knows best. I'm not the one who guides him in that kind of way. So it's just the little nuggets of enjoyment and also direction towards life.
That's amazing. And many parents would be thinking, oh, why not just do the usual holiday getaways, the Dubais, the I don't know, the Kuala Lumpurs, the road trips in the USA or whatever, things that maybe are more normal for a family holiday. This seems to be more of like something a solo traveler might do, and not take a 10-year-old with them. So what's that about?
Well, he does do those wonderful family travel trip with his mom. We are separated parent. He does do this with aunties and dad, but with me, always those crazy trips. And I think he gets best of both of the world. But I think with me, it's not just to travel, and it's just father and son moments. And now my nephew started joining me. So there will be at least once or twice we agreed that we would see the world together, and so long as he wants to. And there's a reason being some of these wonderful, wonderful people in the world. There's a lot to learn from, lot to see. And the world truly, truly is an amazing place Allah has blessed us with. And there is a lot of negativity we hear, but there is infinite amount of positivity and good things in the world. And that's what we should look towards. And those trips are more about those and eating, not worrying too much, and one day here, tomorrow there. And we are genuinely a traveler in this world, and to live like a traveler. I prefer to live like a nomad, and I'm hoping my son would be a nomad, and it couldn't be a better way of living than nomadic life.
That's amazing. What kind of benefits do you feel like your son has taken from some of these travels?
Huge amount. It's not about me, as I was saying. When I go to those trips, remote places, I let him be. He finds his own way. I remember last trip he was walking. We were walking with a nomadic Sahrawi, I think Tuareg gentleman, our guide to the deserts. We walked about good part of a day in the desert, and he was walking with his nomad guy, and God knows there's no communication, but this silent walk, and I'm sure he's picking something up, and I don't know what. And Allah is the best of teachers. I'm just a facilitator, so he's teaching him his own ways. So living with those walks, those open spaces, do open up a lot of things, I believe, and it has done for me. So his teaching will come from his maker.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's an amazing way to look at it, because sometimes fathers, we get bogged down with trying to ensure that our children will achieve a particular thing from our own vision of what we want them to achieve, and we forget to live in that moment of and allow our child to also live in the moment, rather than chasing something that we've set up for them. And that's not to say that goals are a bad thing, and we shouldn't try to mold according to our morals and our values as Muslims and whatnot. But it's also important to not get bogged down and feel like that is the ultimate thing that needs to happen.
The way I remember teaching my son is through observation. I love science and I love nature. So I took him to, when he was young, showed him the natural things, how they work and how they operate. For example, the flowers, and why do they have 5 odd numbers, and the philosophy behind it. A car going by, the sound of the car, pitch going up and down, why that is, and he was interested in science. So talking about the Doppler shift and chaos theories and all of those, he's been brought up with lots of wide knowledge and ideas. And he was one day, must have been about 5, 6. I'm driving him to his mother's house, and in A13 he was looking at the sky, and I can see in the back of the mirror that his eye going back and forth. And he said, "Baba, I really can see the world is around. I really can see it." I said, wonderful, Baba, it is right. And he asked me a question, how do we know Allah really exists? And then this journey took us 2 days of conversation. And at the end, I told him, you find your own truth. But follow Baba for now, and then you find your own truth, you'll come about in your way. So it's a lot of philosophical conversation, a lot of natural, a lot of examples. He discovered shadow when he must have been about 2 or 3 years old, and shadow seemed to follow him. And those moments are nuggets of gold for me. Memories are incredible. So, and then the moment that he discovered the shadow, it's just like, wow. I mean, it's something new. Allah entered into his brain and understanding. So these are just, no father should forget, and no parents should forget.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see the kind of joy that you are getting from sharing some of those memories. And I feel like sometimes as parents, we don't focus on those moments so much. They're easily forgotten. You mentioned about having these kind of philosophical conversations, and your son is 15 now. I mean, most parents would have started maybe those conversations at this age when they're 15, 16, rather than over the past few years that you have been around maybe 10, 11, 12 years old, or even earlier, I don't know. So how do you engage your child in those conversations? Because I'm sure there's a lot of parents, even me included, would want to make sure that our children have the critical thinking abilities from the youngest age possible. So how did you go about creating those conversations with your son?
But it's not really any different than any other conversation. But I liked, I mean, I was a thinker even as a child. I always stayed alone, thought on my own self. But thinking, one of the critical things we can do, I think one of the philosophers says, by nature, as human being, by nature, we desire to know. And it is true, we have an innate desire to know, and we forget that as we grow up. And so my son, when we're eating, we make silly, strange conversation. For example, he's eating rice. Can you work out how many rice could be in the plate? How do we work something out of that? And then how much rice could a parent could have, or a person, your dadu, his grandmother, could have in her lifetime? So how do we work that out in a sitting conversation? So those kind of weird and wonderful conversation, and you just have them. I just don't know how it comes about. You think about things, and they somehow manifest. And the idea is to open up your thinking, that there are more than the lot of great ideas to thought about. And from this, who knows what will come about. Once he was asking me, how does the car turn? I said, well, car does not turn left or right as the train would do. There is a thing called differentials. You say, what is that? And so does the first wheel, the left wheel turns more, or the right wheel turns more? Well, they turn a different amount. So those things you don't think about. There's engineering there. So all sorts of things. But it's observing. I think the idea is to teach him, because I studied art. And observation was a very big deal for us to see. And I taught him learning to see. Once we were walking, he must have been again 5 or 6 years old. And there was this incredible light coming across, morning light coming across the trees. And I made him stop. Said, wait, Baba, let's stop. Let's observe this light, this incredible warm light. I'm sure he didn't fully understand at that age. The idea for him to see, learning to see more than what we take for granted. We look left, right, and center all the time. We're seeing things, but we really don't see. And if we start seeing things properly and take time and think about them, you will find your creator in it. So, and you see the amazingness. And it's just beautiful to see things properly. And I taught him by taking him at different height, different levels. So once, as we stand in one place, we see one thing. But if you go up on top of the table, you see the same thing in a slightly different way, different perspective. And go up even higher, top of my shed, you will see a different perspective. So that's what he's done, all of those things. So again, it's this training to see things, training to take in the world that he lives in, inhabits in a broader way.
I think what I'm getting from that underlying message really is that the father needs to be present and needs to observe. And if the father doesn't model that that kind of thing within his own life, doesn't lead his life like that, then it's pretty much impossible to have those conversations with your child, because you're not observing these things. You're not stopping to have a moment and to reflect and to look at the creation. You're not giving yourself a moment to slow down and to really take in your surroundings. So how are you expecting your child to also build those skills if that's not a habit in your own life? So I think it must start from the father and his own relationship with his senses and his observations and his creator.
I mean, we have been placed in this world and in our journey, and there are baggage we can keep and there are baggage we can, but we also need to see what's around us and to start thinking. I don't think we think enough. And question ourselves enough in every respect why things. I mean, for example, if you see a glass of water and if the outside temperature is certain and then inside temperature is certain, then the water is steaming or kind of moisture in the outside. So often kids will ask you, might say, why do you ask silly things? I mean, no children's question is silly. We just don't know the answers. So why is the sky blue? Well, why is the water blue, the sea blue? And well, we just don't know the answers, and we need to go and find out and say, look, we don't know. Many of time I said to myself, but I don't know the answer. Give me some time, I'll find out. Yeah. And it's that knowing that you don't know everything, knowing that there's a lot to know, and but I think you're absolutely right. I think we must reflect and then pass that training on to our children. It's not about giving our son to a teacher, an imam to go and teach them. No, it's not their job. We are the first teachers. We, the parents, are the first teachers. And if we know how to teach, and if we know how to learn, and the learning itself is something we need to learn. And learning never stops until both of your feet are in the grave. So, I always say to my nephews, and they're all grown up, I said, look, you just done your degrees and masters and so on. You don't know anything yet. You just started the journey of learning. You've learned how to learn. Now go learn rest of your life. So that's the objective anyway.
Excellent advice, especially pertinent time now. Schools have just restarted.
Yes.
So I want to move on to Islam mediation, but just concluding this sort of topic on observation and spending those moments with your son, traveling and allowing him to observe these different cultures and creations. You mentioned some of the benefits it has for your son, but what benefit do you think those moments have for a father? And should fathers try and create those moments more and more?
It just, when you said that, it just gave me shivers. I know what moments. It's just absolute joy. I mean, I don't know what it is. It's just absolute joy to be a father. I was so worried when I learned I became a father. I said, will I be a good father? Will I be able to fulfill his responsibility? That was the fear I had. And I don't know whether I'm a good father, but I'm trying to be one. I know I'm trying to be modest here, but at the same time, genuinely, I don't know, because the outcome, I can only do what I can do within my limitation, within my knowledge. What he becomes, I don't know end of the day. So for me, I wrote a letter because when he was very young, even within our first year, we got separated. So I didn't see him for a good part of a year. I was living abroad. I was working as an art director. I wrote a letter on his first birthday, a very long, heartbreaking letter to say, just in case if I die and he won't know me. So I wrote this letter and expressing so many of my wishes and desires, not necessarily I want him to be, but who I am and what life is and the learning and Islamic learning, what I hope for him, more of a passive direction. And to think about thinking and a bit of a philosophical side, or lots of things, and why his name is what it is and how it came about. So it's a fairly long letter. And one day, if I'm not around, at least you read that. So, and in it, I said quite a few things. Alhamdulillah, shukr Allah, and I go back, and most of the things we've already done. So that's great. And,
that's beautiful. Yeah. That is really nice, and gives me an idea. Maybe I should do something like that as well.
Yeah.
So Salam mediation, I guess before we get into how it came about, tell us what exactly is Salam mediation?
Well, by very name, it's peace and to mediate the idea of we coming to, in our case, breakdown of marriage. And I'm a family court mediator, registered and trained by the family court system. I have seen in my own marriage broke down. I wasn't able to see my son, even though I love my son more than anything in this world or material world. But I wasn't able to be with him. Seeing him was very much controlled, and I wasn't able to have Eid with him. Dropped everything when I was working in Middle East to be with him. Provided, never till today failed him for support him financially, his mother. It is God-given right that I support him. So I've done all of this, but still I wasn't able to. My mother wasn't able to spend time with him on Eid on various occasions, and I persuaded to do this amicably as best as I can. I've pretty much visited every day with him. For 3 years, I did not work, devoted my time to being with him, and also did my master's. In the end, nothing seemed to resolve. My ex wasn't willing to make this process easier, and slowly, then in the end, the only option left with me was to look at the family court system. I have this weird thing that I don't go by one thing. I'll do one thing, but I also have a backup plan always. So my backup plan was to fall into the family court, and during the time that I'm trying to persuade her to do things amicably, let me have him, proving, not that I need to prove any mother that I am a good father, but I think reassuring is the right word to the mother. And look, I will take care of him. I'm not going to harm him. He is the world to me. And for 4 years, it didn't resolve. In the end, one day I turned around and I said, we are going to the family court. We are going to apply. And by then I already applied. And 6 months later, we find ourselves in family court system, immediately litigating the case. I did everything. And then in front of the judge, the court, of course, it goes to the Kafkas, and Kafkas found no real reason why we couldn't be. And she confirmed that I'm a good father. And so what's the reason? So she didn't really have any reason. And the solicitor didn't say anything. In the end, the judge said, I don't want to see you in court. And that is us. If there is any issue, go to mediation and do it in mediation. And that was the only time we needed to go to court. Alhamdulillah. I mean, yes, I don't know what's her reason for all of this. There wasn't any. I can only imagine feeling hurt and anger or breakdown of marriage. But our children shouldn't suffer over that. It is our problem. Our children shouldn't miss a day with any of our parents, any of our children, and they are going to go through a lifelong of suffering. And as parents, as much as we can, we should mitigate them. We will have, on a family breakdown, the divorce does take place. Things can go wrong, and we shouldn't. You will always have a disagreement or pain and suffering towards it, but remember your children. They didn't do anything wrong. And that's the bit which was keep bringing me back. And I have my teacher, who is a Canadian brother, who is a father figure to me. He's the only one said, do what you have to do to be a father to your son. If you have to sell everything, if that's mean what, then do that. Be a father to him. That's the only thing matters. So I did just that, whatever it took to be a father to him. Alhamdulillah, now our relationship, that is to say his mother and I, she's moved on, I've moved on, 15 years going back. This journey has taught us a lot of good things. She's, taking care of him. The career stays with him, with her, and he visits here whenever he wants to. We go to travel together. He goes, So our relationship, when there is a school visit, we are united. If there is a disagreement, we have that conversation separately. But when we go to school or any professionals in front of anyone, we are united in our thoughts so that they can't break us, system can't break us, and they can't see there's two conflicting parents, because this certainly does not give good message to people. You don't want to show outsiders that you have, disagreement. Yes, outsiders will know you're a separated parent, but it is good to be united. If you're going to front, mostly we're going to be going in front of the school meetings and so on. If you have any disagreement, sort them out separately. If you don't agree anything, show that you can agree to disagree. Those give your son or your child more of a stability in front of other people. You have to put your children always above everything else. And if you focus that way, then we should try to put our difference aside and deal with them separately. And our children should not suffer. They're already going to do that.
That's very true. There's a lot to break down there. Jazakallah khair for explaining that. I want to go back and try to get into like different points that I've sort of noted there. So I think one thing is, so you mentioned about mediation essentially within a family court system. So what does that actually look like? What does it mean to mediate within a family court system?
Okay. People come to mediators when they need to, well, shouldn't be, but more often than not, when they need to apply to the family court system. Usually the father, sometimes the mother, they need to get access to their child they're not able to see. So they will fill in a form called C100 form. And in it will ask, have they considered mediation? And if they have not, they will need to consider mediation, because that it is voluntary, but the initial part of information about mediation, it is mandated by the family court. So that even though if you don't want to mediate, you need to at least have an initial conversation with the mediator. So the mediator can provide you with the information about mediation, then choice is yours. Just only one party needs to do that.
So this is essentially the step before a couple goes to the divorce court, if that's the right word for it. Before
they go to any family court. I suppose now most civil court probably requires mediation, but any family court with finances, divorce, child arrangement, any other special issues, matters, you would need to consider mediation before going, at least one party. Unless there is an overriding issue such as safety, unless there has been other special issues such as police involvement or safety of individuals, prior court cases.
Okay, interesting. And what would be the objective of mediation? And what would be maybe the reason to go through that rather than going straight to a court case?
Well, first of all, you can't. It's mandated. So they have to at least have the information. And the information is what is mediation, or how do mediator work, and what you can achieve in mediation. And so that's what the information gives you. And then the choice is yours, should you want to mediate or not. And maybe one party wants to mediate, sees the value in it, the other party doesn't. So therefore they will, like, for instance, some say, yes, let's proceed. And they've done the MIAM, Mediation Information Assessment meeting. Then I approach the other party. Only then I can approach the other party. Another party does not respond, ignores, or simply says, I don't want to talk to you, or I don't want to mediate. And then the party A, whoever the initial applier or applicant, will get the MIAM certificate. It's just a signing of that section for their court form. And as a mediator, I'll sign that off to say that this case is non-mediatable, or a party because that section doesn't give you much information to blame anybody or say anything. It just says this isn't a mediatable case, so it left. And anything in discussion, if they do come to mediation, imagine they have come to mediation, or they said something, it will not, it is closed. It's not for the court to hear or know. It is without prejudice, so the court won't know any discussion they've made, whatever has been said or not said, and cannot go to court unless both parties willingly opening out what was discussed in mediation. As a mediator, I cannot be part of that court process. So it's just to help parties openly discuss whatever they want to. It is confidential, and they cannot record it. They cannot share with even their family members. So it is confidential. I'm impartial. I'm not like a solicitor. It is, it is without prejudice, so it can't go to court. So they have a complete safe place to discuss their conflict. You may wonder, what's the difference of mediation and going to court? Court seems to be better, and often people choose. And I think, it's accepted. Is a court is the wrong place to solve your differences, especially to its family.
Right.
Because families are so individual. If different people have different approaches, different life and children need, who knows better than the parents do? That's what court is saying. So sort your differences in family, amongst yourself. Yes, with a specialist. Yes, with somebody who will help you have a conversation like a mediator. So that's why court system allows up to 500 party grant, encouraging parents to go to mediation without any means tested. So everybody's entitled to that grant, whoever wants to resolve their differences to do with children. And it's going to court is like using a sledgehammer, using a solicitor and the court to resolve something minor. And it shouldn't be, and you will never resolve it. The conflict always will be there. Whereas conversation will help resolve some of the ill feeling, or some of the things that you may not never understood why a person did, one party did this or the other party did that, responded. You can have that conversation. In court, you can't. In court, you will get a judge giving you the order. This is the order you have to accept. Whereas if you do mediation, you both decide how you want to see your child or how you want to resolve your finances. It's not ordered on you, you amicably deciding. And then if this decision, both of you wants to make it legally binding, you can also do that.
Okay, that was going to be my next question, whether within mediation there can be anything that's legally binding.
It is, yes. So once the mediator writes an agreement, whether it's a parenting plan or memorandum of understanding, that then this then can be taken to a solicitor of any party, and then they can write a consent order without going to court. This consent order can be sent to the court, and then within 2 or 3 weeks, this court consent order can come back as an order on both parties to follow. So whether it's a child arrangement or settling a finance or £500,000, £1 million finance, whatever it is, there's no limit what you can put in your consent order. And if in the future you want to renegotiate the consent order, you can come back to mediation and tweak your consent order, and you can do that. So there's no, it's a more of a gentler way of coming to, and that's most certainly the cost-effective way, because if you go to court for child arrangement, you could be spending £20,000-30,000, as many client of mine has done, have failed to resolve it in mediation, then come back for the finances, and they said, look, we spent £30,000, and each party.
Wow.
So, and then finance will be usually more because there's more to calculate.
So you're saying mediation costs considerably less than ending up in court?
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, in mediation, you're looking at hundreds of pounds, maybe 1,000, 1,500. Court, you're starting from 10 at the bottom end of, if it's nothing, if it's a straightforward and at least a year long battle. Mediation, you can do it in a couple of weeks. It's just a conversation.
Why do people then why do you say that it's therefore accepted that people generally go towards the courts rather than go through mediation? Is it because the court is much faster when it makes a decision? Mediation is conversation, it takes long. Maybe you can try and clarify some of these misconceptions that people have.
Court is certainly not faster. That I can tell you. You're looking at in first hearing, which is 15-minute first hearing. I mean, I used to be a Mackenzie, as I mentioned, after sorting out my issues. I've helped quite a lot of people for 9 years, going to court, helping people, of course, as a volunteer. go through the process so that people don't have to spend tens of thousands. And I've seen us set in court. You're looking at a first hearing, 15-minute, 10-minute, what's the case about, and that's it. So that might take up to 6 months or even 4 months, this first hearing come. Then you go to the second hearing, whatever the issues are, then the issue can be discussed. Various other professionals got to be involved, such as the Kafkas. If there is a Section 7 report needs into doing that report, all of that takes time. And all of that also requires money. If you're using a solicitor, they're charging £200 plus hours. If they're visiting in court with you for a day, God knows, if it's at 9 o'clock, if it gets delayed, the solicitor have to stay with you 1,000, 1,500. If it's a barrister, 2,000 plus. So all of that costs money. Now, it certainly isn't faster. Why people don't know, because not enough people know about mediation, what mediators do, especially in our community. They think we're just people trying to make talk it through and make it work and go ahead and it's going to be fine. And they feel, and more often than not, I hear that judge will understand my position. Judge will understand my position.
Right.
I know, I believe I'm right. I think that is misconception. Judge is not looking for what you want. Judges, if it's a child related, judge is looking for what is the best interest, in this case for the child. And judge is not going to listen to you or the other party. They're just going to listen to somebody like a Kafkas, a third party who's advisory service. And the Kafkas are going to be looking at 7 criteria for child arrangement issues. And all of those criteria focuses on the child's best interest. So bottom line is, it's the child's right to be with both parents. It's not the right of the father. It's not the right of the mother. It's the right of the child, whether it's with any of the parent or grandparent in this case can also apply for, if there's no contact. Imagine a father and mother don't want the grandparent to have contact with the children, the grandchildren, or a grandfather has passed away and the paternal grandfather is not seeing one of the child, then he can make an arrangement. He can make an application to the family court or come to a mediator. So grandparents have that right too.
And what would then be the difference between mediation and marriage counseling?
2 different things. Counseling, you talk to counselors with your issues and problems and understanding, and they will guide you through understanding your or your issues. Mediation, we're looking at the conflict itself, and we're not trying to fix your issue. We're trying to look at the conflict and help you guide and resolve them through, if it's a child arrangement issue, how you can see your children. What are the, we may suggest, maybe if you feel your children are not going to be safe, maybe a contact center could be one of them, or maybe one of the uncle's house, or this person you prefer, or that friend you're mutual to, maybe you can start visitation there. So we look at solutions with them and what could work, rather than, the mental state, should we say. And I think if there has been a very high conflict marriage, mediation followed by counseling is, I always suggest people should seek counseling, because if they feel better within themselves, they can serve better within their relationships with their children or with their ex-spouses or new relationship, because you will need to move into, often people move into new relationships. You don't want to bring your old conflict into new relationships. So you have to resolve them, understand where it come from. Sometimes counselors may even make you look at your own self, what's going on, some of your behaviors, not just counseling, therapies of other sorts, looking at them from Islamic perspective. Perhaps other overriding issues can be in their, external forces and sources could be causing certain problems. So looking at all of those things, why certain people behave certain way, is essential.
And earlier you mentioned there are some scenarios where the case would sort of skip the mediation stage because of some factors. What were some of those factors that meant that case has to go straight to a judge and to a court?
There are a number of ways they can do that. If there has been a very high conflict, there has been police involvement, social services involvement, children have been taken away in social service, or a severe violent fear of the other party, and there has been maybe a prior court case regarding it. So you can say this case is not mediatable because there has been domestic violence, and it can be proven. And also imagine one party has a severe domestic violence issue, then they certainly wouldn't be able to mediate. So those special cases, and often we hear domestic violence, but they are genuine domestic violence issue, then they shouldn't be mediated. They should go straight to court, basically. And and even as a mediator, we have a choice because it's voluntary. We can take a case on, or we can refuse the case. We can simply say this case is not mediatable after hearing you. We suggest we'll give you the MIAM certificate. So that means we sign on that form, and then they end up in family court. But I do my best to look at where possible. If it's not safe, if it's not safe, we won't take it on, and no mediator should take it on. But if it's possible, then mediator should help resolve these issues. Often, I think we have a role as a mediator to do the best we can for the people and who's coming to us. And this for me, it's not just a job. It's more than a job. It's actually, when you go back and hear some of the amazing stories, it just makes everything worthwhile, basically. So it's more than a job to me.
Yeah, actually, I want to touch on some of your personal journey in this, in terms of what you've actually done and some of the positive case studies. Just before we get there, just had a couple of more questions to kind of clarify mediation in my head and in the viewers' head as well, inshallah. Which was, from maybe an Islamic perspective, not to say you're in a position to give like a fatwa or anything, but what I mean is, like, generally from the Islamic lens, it seems like mediation is something that would be encouraged for Muslims to do, in the sense of that the deen is encouraging, for example, conflict resolution at many different stages in life. So would you say that mediation is something that would be encouraged for Muslims to explore within maybe their sort of journey of the conflict between couples?
Most definitely. I mean, who are the greatest mediators? I mean, if we start our greatest teacher of all teachers, Prophet, he is the greatest of mediator. And some of his teaching is all about mediation. It's all about resolving conflict. It's all about negotiation, discussion. Not my way or the highway. It's even coming to Islam. It's somebody has to negotiate their way coming into Islam. It's nobody's forced into Islam. No, and the conflict isn't, or using court by force is not what we do. And if we find even the high conflict issues, if you come through the lens of the mediator, the conflict often slowly over time dies away. If you come back or come with forceful nature of resolving the conflict never goes away. You will never resolve them. If you have a dialogue, there is a chance you can resolve that conflict and then move on from it. And also, most certainly, gives you peace of mind. And yes, Islamic perspective is certainly the route to go. And I'm not saying any individual will get every right through mediation. Sometimes we do have to result in looking at the law and using the law in our where injustice has been done. And some of the cases that we're dealing with, they don't, more often than not, they don't need to be in court. They shouldn't be in court. And as a result, if I may, those cases that are in court shouldn't be in court, taking up the time to the case that really deserves to be in the court. And that's the problem in the family court they're facing. We have to remember that does my issue needs to be in court, and can I resolve it better somewhere else?
Yeah. So, from what I understand, putting it into a timeline for a couple. So a couple is married, is going through some conflict. and if they've reached maybe some sort of difficulty in the relationship, one thing would be marriage counseling. That could maybe be an initial step. Now maybe the conflict has gone further and they've decided they do want to take the route of divorce and separation. Then the next thing would be the mediation, rather than going straight to the court. And through the mediation, if things were resolved and they were able to sort of part their ways in a way which they both parties agreed upon, that would be the end. But if they then decided that they want to then take this to the courts, then they'll have to go through the whole court procedure, and that would create the final step of what the resolution would be between the two parties. Is that a good understanding of a general timeline?
Somewhat general understanding, yes, that's somewhat correct. What you're saying is a party decides to end and break down their marriage. They have children, they may have finances, they want to resolve those. If they come to mediation, they do that. Mediator then helps them guide it. Let's assume that they were able to resolve the finances through discussion, but they weren't able to resolve child arrangement. So that's 50% success. So
Right.
And then the bit about the finance that they're happy with, they have an option. There's a diagram in my website. You can see how the process works diagrammatically. So they look at, then they have a choice. Imagine they have resolved the finance. Then I provide them with open financial statement. That is to say, both of their finances, they can really see numbers and figures and how it works. And then this open financial statement I can create a memorandum of understanding, what they have agreed, that is. So one thing, they can see who has what. Next thing, they can see what they've agreed on. So two different documents. And then they can choose. They can keep it amongst themselves. Let's just say one party needs to sell a house and give the other party a certain amount of money. And so they said, okay, we'll go ahead and do that. We're happy with it. This then doesn't need to be legally binding, because they feel they have a good understanding and they're happy with that result. It doesn't need to be legally binding. They trust one another. And then they can go on and do exactly that. This is informal decision, informal arrangement, though through a mediator. They feel the decision is fair. Now, there could be another party thinks that, well, we've made the agreement, we've decided, and we're happy with the arrangement, but I'd like to, for my peace of mind, this is a lot of money, for peace of mind, I'd like to make that arrangement legally binding. Okay. Now, mediator cannot write or do anything which first party is not willing to accept. We cannot enforce any ideas or suggestions, and we can give ideas, we can discuss openly. It is their choice in the end what they want to put in. Now, we can't just put in any random thing. We have to put in what, if this ends up in court, would be fair. Court would say, in our understanding, court will give certain amount of money to certain parents, or the division will be a certain way. We know that, have a good understanding of it based on our experiences. And of course, they're the one who decides. So then this goes to the court via a solicitor. Okay. Why a solicitor in between? Now, because mediation, I'm not an advisor. I cannot advise. By law, I cannot advise. They need the agreement that they have made amongst themselves through a mediator. The court gives them that little bit of finalization. Independent solicitor can advise them. Have they, just before it goes to court, have they actually got the right? Have they got it right? Whatever they decided, have they got it right? So that's why court encourages people. It's not mandatory. Court encourages people, go get some advice based on the agreement that you made, and then make that agreement, if you're happy with it, into a consent order. The solicitor then will make it into a consent order. Now, some people make the consent order online and then send it to the court, but it is advisable that the solicitor does that. Solicitor can advise them individually, and then one solicitor can write the consent order. So both party takes their piece of agreement from the mediator, memorandum of understanding, to a solicitor, and then one of the solicitor will write the consent order. Then this consent order gets sent to the court, and then court looks at it. More often than not, 99% of the time, court will approve it, because solicitors and mediators cannot write anything that court won't agree. So end of the day, it needs to be fair, and then it will be sent back as an order on both of them. Neither party needs to attend the court. Neither party have any dealing any more than through the paperwork.
Sure.
And then each party solicitor, in this case, will receive the order, or individually they'll receive the order themselves. Then it is legally binding for them to follow. Whereas, and if at some occasion after the process of mediation breaks down, for instance, another, or could be that both parties did not agree, or one party did not agree to any of the scenarios, as I was giving child arrangement, the party didn't agree to child arrangement, then at any point they can stop mediation. Remember, mediation at the moment, which may change very soon, voluntary. So they have a right, without any excuse, they choose to stop mediation, and the mediator have that choice to stop mediation, and then the court can go to, so the case can go to the court, or they can apply, or the MIAM certificate will be issued by the mediator. So it needs to, they have complete freedom at any point. They can choose to go to a court.
Okay, very clear. Thank you so much for that breakdown. You were mentioning earlier, in terms of your own divorce experience, that you essentially had to represent yourself and had to sort of, I guess, learn the tricks of the trade in a way to kind of ensure that you were able to get the rights that you're looking for when it comes to seeing your child. And that sort of spurred you towards starting this kind of mediation service. Can you tell me, like, what was that moment where you felt like, okay, this is something that needs to be done? Like, I've gone through this experience. I don't have a background in law or things like this, but I feel passionate enough to say we should try and create this mediation service so people can use this. What was that moment of inspiration?
To be honest, throughout my life, I never liked people doing things for me. I have to understand whether it's medical, if my mom is well, my father is unwell. I need to know. I'm not going to take, just because you're a professional, I'm not going to take your word for it. I need to understand. And you said X, Y, and Z, I'll have to accept it. No. That's the kind of like rebel in me lead to this. If there is something as important as my son, seeing my son, I may end up using a solicitor, but I need to know the process. I need to understand the process. So I started learning, and I realized that there was an amazing book that I read. By the way, I'm dyslexic, so reading isn't something that comes naturally to me. Learning isn't natural to me. So it's covered to cover.
You've learned so much about the world, mashallah.
Well, Allah provided me with knowledge. I don't know that I have, but I've read through this book. So family court, something like a family court without a solicitor, something along that line. I forgot the title. It's available in Amazon. I recommend most of my clients to read it. I forgot the name in this case. So it's basically going to family court without a solicitor. So I read it cover to cover. And there was a moment that I understood what's going on, and I read so much. Those days there was not much YouTube videos to watch. So went through lots of articles and understood what's going on and how to apply, and I did all of that. And then once I received a letter, once the other party received my court paperwork from their solicitor, really unpleasant letter. And I don't blame my ex, I do blame the solicitor. Solicitor writes horrible things just because X saying, and that's where responsibility on a professional like a solicitor people need to think what they're writing. Just because the client wants something, you don't need to write it. And I always say that. And I've edited so many people's statement, because at the end of the day, it's no point increasing the conflict. Our job, or whoever, the solicitor or mediator, reduce conflict. So, and it was very unpleasant. And I was shaking. I remember I came out of the mosque Friday prayer, Good Street Masjid. As I'm coming down the street, I see the email, and when I think about it, that still affects me. And a lot of unpleasant thing. And then, and as it often happens, it's please don't understand, we shouldn't point fingers to our ex. It's not, it just happens because there is conflict, and we have to understand that and let it go. And it happened, but I do blame the solicitor. They shouldn't write things like that. And I read it, and I remember the book said at the end, or section somewhere, that you would receive those kind of things. But remember, they are just allegations, nothing more. It won't do anything. It won't harm you. Remember, they're just allegations. And that gave me immediately peace in my mind. I said, no, I haven't done any of this stuff. It's just allegations. Somebody wants to write it. That's just, it means nothing. That's what she said. It means nothing. And that was the nugget, I suppose, spared me way of pushing for the right thing. And the most important thing, always try to do the right thing by the law, whether it's Islamic law or the law of the land. Please do the right thing, because one day you will see its fruit. It might not see it instantly, and I see of course I make many mistakes, and keep looking at yourself, but many mistakes. I'm not saying I was the best of the husband. Best to look at yourself first before pointing fingers. So, but the fruit of my labor, should I say, is my son today. The way I have my son today, I couldn't be more grateful to Allah. And he's best of friend. We are so close. We do so many things together. And if there is a friend I would call, he's my first friend. So we have no limitation in what we discuss, and he's completely free. And he has two homes. He can be anywhere he wants. So yes, that was the fire.
Amazing. And so since you started Salam Mediation, you mentioned earlier that you've sort of gone through the correct training, you've been qualified, and you've sort of opened up this mediation service where everything that you explained, the aspect of mediation, you are now somebody that can do that for couples. And in doing that, I'm sure you must have come across some cases that prove that mediation can be something that can really help couples when it comes to the best way towards separating. Do you mind highlighting maybe one or two particular cases that you've experienced, that you've mediated yourself, and you've seen the best outcome that mediation actually has to offer?
Plenty. That's, I suppose, another kind of fire that keeps you going. And I do call back my clients to see how they are. All the mediators don't have to do that. It's not, as I said to you, it's not a job to me. It's more than a job. It's something that I want people to have a good relation, child to be with both parent. I do call back to see how things are and so on. And I can tell you one case early on in my career. I did, a sister lived abroad. I won't mention which country, and the brother lived here. And initially the brother didn't want to be mediated. And 3 months later, he changed his mind. He independently approached me and he said, can we resolve this? And this was to do with finance and children, how he could sue the children, and how a sister can resolve finances. So it took a while. I remember doing the mediation, and the final mediation day, it was 3-hour conversation we've had through the Zoom. And it was extremely difficult looking at their finances. I mean, this was just at that time, that day, children were somewhat resolved, but the finance wasn't resolved. And the 3-hour conversation, and it shouldn't be that long, but usually it's 2 hours joint sessions. And I was seeing that mediation going in the way that it was going to the right direction. So I said, allow it a little bit longer, and it went over a little over 3 hours, and they agreed. And can you imagine? I'm new at this, and adrenaline running through my body. And once it's completed, and they closed, zoomed down, and I remember my body was shaking. And it's not because so much, because remember, two parties are arguing and fighting, discussing, and not fighting in that sense, but discussing heavy things and disagreements coming, and you're the one who's keeping them controlled, or keeping them managed, I should say, not controlled, managed. And you're holding it on. Remember, all this, you're the one, you're the middle, you're the holding, and it's a lot to take on, a lot. And 3 hours of conversation about these things, and keeping managing them. And in the end, everybody was shaking to say that. And then they resolved it. They accepted it. And then I gave them a bit more time, another 2 weeks. I said, look, you thought about it. Please go back. You may change your mind. You have your right to change your mind and talk to me again. And 2 weeks down the line, both of them have spoken to them, and there was some more things she wanted to change and discuss, and he wasn't saying this. So eventually, further 2 or 3 weeks later, they came to a agreeable position on their finances. Then I wrote it down, everything, and did the financials and MOU, memorandum of understanding, and the financial settlement, financial statement. So done both of them and gave it to them. And then now they're separated. They sorted their finances, they sorted their children, both of them independently, separately, got married to somebody else. They're seeing the children. The father visited the abroad, and now moved to abroad with the new spouse, and to be near the children. And so they call, and I've spoken with the children after much later. Obviously, I don't go into personal relationship with them, but the story was so amazing that not only for their own mental health, imagine this case didn't resolve in mediation. It would have lasted them 3 years in court. They would have spent good 50 to 100,000, both parties together, at least. And the conflict wouldn't have resolved. Some of the unsaid things wouldn't have been said. And would they have been married? Who knows? They may have been, but there would be a lot of other ill feeling. And like that, there are many stories. I called back recently, and another client was saying, thank you very much. This was the recent one. I'm able to see my children, and things are going fine for us. And I'm glad we came to and we've spoken and resolved it. He is visiting, he's providing, he sees, and so on. And you see these things, and I, it's just, some real joy, basically.
Yeah, beautiful, amazing. I guess the golden question then is, how do we get more people to use mediation services? I mean, okay, that came across wrong, because we don't want people to get divorced in the first place, right? But I mean, in the situation where people do decide to separate, how do we encourage more people to use a service like mediation instead of going through the courts?
Remember, mediation isn't just in family court. Mediation, you may have a conflict between neighbors. You may have conflict between brothers. You may have conflict between colleagues, work colleagues. So the workplace mediation, there is mediation. I can do all of those things as a mediator. Most mediators, the family mediator can cover all of it, because our training is a bit higher than the workplace mediation. So you imagine if you have an NHS job and you're not agreeing with one of the other party, and it can go through mediation. School parent relationship can be mediated. So the mediation covers all spectrum of our conflict. So why people don't want to, how they get into mediation? Well, I think with family court, they have to, as I mentioned, if they need to apply to family court, they can. They don't have to go through that. They don't have to apply to family court. They just need to go to a good registered mediator, such as an FMC, Family Mediation Council. Go in, look for the registered mediators. They will be properly trained, and they can sign court papers if needs be. So I think if there are conflicts that can be resolved within the family, but not just go to anybody. Family, somebody who has good knowledge, broad knowledge of understanding, somebody who can be neutral, can also be a good mediator. But having trained mediator, they will know how to deal with conflict and understand where the conflict is really coming from. So there are plenty out there, basically. But so not many Muslim mediators at the moment, but it is increasing. More and more people are going to mediation.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I think just having that understanding and the general awareness and knowledge of mediation and mediation services, and the benefits that it can bring, I think is important for people to know. Even subhanallah, people who maybe never are considering divorce at the moment, mashallah, their marriage is going well, or in the workplace things are going well for them, or whatever it is in their business, things are going well, whatever relationships that they have are going well, and they don't even imagine any separation or any conflict happening. But having the knowledge that if conflict does happen, here are the ways that it can be resolved, I think is very important for people to have that in hindsight. And you even mentioned, I think you said that you didn't know something like this existed before you started reading and going through the process and reading that book and training yourself. So it's, I'm sure since then, there's been a lot more awareness about these various different services of conflict resolution. But I think a lot more awareness can be done. I'm hoping maybe this podcast kind of adds to that and people get a better understanding. But what would you say, as I guess as a final wrap up, in terms of increasing that general awareness? Do you think more of that needs to happen?
Certainly, absolutely, because really and truly, court isn't the solution. Even the court themselves say, the judges themselves say, and often judges will order people to go back to mediation. Then it's an order on them to follow. So, court isn't a solution to some of this conflict and low-level conflict. And you may feel your conflict is higher, but it probably isn't. Extreme cases could be high-level conflict, but even some of those can be resolved in mediation. People should imagine you may have friends going through difficulties, and people should, if there is an issue with marriages happening, it's all right to talk about it. It's all right to get help. Absolutely fine to seek counseling. We shouldn't hide our problems and talk to the right kind of people, not necessarily anybody, but right kind of people. That I'm having this problem. Brother, you may have had this problem, or how do I resolve it? Do you know anybody? If people should talk about it. And within our Muslim Asian culture, we hide these family problems and sweep it under the floor because we don't want to discuss it. Father's not seeing children, we don't want to discuss it. Father's not providing, or mother's not allowing exit. Divorce is taking place, we don't want to discuss it. Yeah. Unless you discuss these things, unless you understand how to go about it, you're never going to go about it the right way. And more often than not, I have seen, more often than not, I repeat, is that family giving wrong advice. Family is only looking at one perspective, and they feel their side is always the right one. I think it's fair, a sensible gentleman or a female, in this case, could talk to the other party. Really, let me understand. Approach it with the view of understanding, and guide them first in the name of Allah, and guide them. Look, if you can't resolve it, go to someone who can.
Yes.
And it's all right, if you part amicably. It isn't the Quran. If you part amicably, we need to part amicably. And that's the aim should be, because it is, the end of the day, a journey in life, isn't it? So, and all of this it's been tested with it. So live, accept the test and go through it. And it's just a test, end of the day. My teacher always reminds me, it's just a dunya. Don't worry, it's just a dunya. My Canadian teacher, he's my father and he's my teacher. So,
mashallah.
It's just a dunya.
Well, it's just a dunya. Jazakallah khair, Tawheed. A beautiful point to end on. I think that was a very, very informative podcast. And inshallah, we can have you on another time to maybe, we maybe touch the surface on many of these topics. And I'm sure with your experience, we can sort of dive deeper into very specific types of conflict and resolving them and solutions and giving more advice to couples who are going through difficulty. So I think that would be great to have you on again, inshallah. So jazakallah khair.
Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Wa alaikum salam.
Alright guys, so if you enjoyed that video, please do subscribe and follow me on TikTok and Instagram for more dad related content. Check out some of my previous videos and look forward to the next ones.